Hello everyone, Jules here. Today I'd like to talk about a new tarot book that was published earlier this year. That is Tarot Mysticism by Joe Monteleone. This was published by Llewellyn earlier this year. And I want to particularly talk about this book today because it is such a good book and it's such a well-written book. And I'll start by saying that, to be honest, I did not intend to buy this book. I think it is because I initially thought that I wasn't sure if the tarot world or the book world particularly needed another book about the Thoth tarot. And so I decided to look into this book anyway, and I decided to browse through the beginning of the book. And it quite surprised me, and it surprised me by how well written the book is and the approach of the author. So I'm going to talk about the book, what's in the book, and why I particularly like this book, and why I think it's really worthwhile for people who want to know more about the Thoth tarot. But it's not only the Thoth tarot specifically in particular, it's also for people who want to know more about Hermetic Qabalah. And I'll get into that in a moment about the book and the approach. Now, the other thing I'm going to say about this book as well, Tarot Mysticism, is that it's different because it is about the Thoth tarot in relation to Hermetic Qabalah. That's why the book is called Tarot Mysticism. And I think that's what's going to set the book apart, really, because there have only been 3 books that have been specifically written in regard to the Thoth tarot in relation to Hermetic Qabalah. That is the first book that was written specifically for the deck by Aleister Crowley himself. This is the essential authoritative book about the deck, but a lot of people find this book, the style of writing, too dense and written in a very lyrical, esoteric way that Aleister Crowley wrote. So that's, of course, the ultimate book to get about the Thoth tarot. And the second one is The Mystical Qabalah by Dion Fortune. And I've talked about this book on my channel a lot over the years, and even on my previous channel as well. I've actually been on YouTube for 8 years now, and my first channel lasted 5 years. And the channel I have now is 3 years old. And I have spoken on both of those channels about Hermetic Qabalah and about the mystical side and the mystical meaning of Hermetic Qabalah. And I have talked about that a lot over the years. And on the channel now, as I did with the first channel, there is a review on my channel about this book. And Dion Fortune has been quite a large influence on my Qabalah studies and Qabalah practice. Now, I've mentioned those 2 books in relation to this Tarot Mysticism book by Joe Monteleone. And that is because Joe Monteleone refers to both of those books in this book. And I also now regard this book as the third in line. So I actually regard this book so highly that I actually see those as the top 3 books to understand the Thoth Tarot in relation to Hermetic Qabalah. And what I like about this book as well is that the author specifically states that the Thoth Tarot is actually all about the Hermetic Qabalah of the Golden Dawn. That's why the deck was created. Aleister Crowley did not have a particularly high regard for divination, and neither did the Golden Dawn. Arthur Waite didn't particularly regard divination very highly either, because both of those decks were specifically created for Hermetic Qabalah of the Golden Dawn. So I like right from the start, in the very first chapter, Joe Monteleone specifically states that. And this is what I like, because I think there have been other books that have written about the Thoth Tarot, where, especially the more recent ones, there's more recent books about particularly Qabalah, Hermetic Qabalah, where it has been deconstructed to some extent. And of course, when that happens, trying to make it completely contemporary with contemporary concepts, you're actually losing all of the essence and all of the true mystical treasures that are actually all about the true Hermetic Qabalah. And that's the other reason why I really like this book, because Joe Monteleone obviously, he's a member of the OTO. He obviously understands, he knows the Thoth Tarot inside and out. And he has captured the essence of the Thoth Tarot and why it was created in the first place. So this is one of the few books, apart from the other 2 books that I showed, that actually capture the essence of the deck and the system. It is an actual system. And I suppose a lot of people always bring up the particular book by Lon Milo Duquette, Understanding the Crowley Thoth Tarot. I don't particularly like that book. I do like a lot of the other books by Lon Milo Duquette. I do like quite a lot of his other books. But that particular book, Understanding the Crowley Thoth Tarot, for me, it's just a commentary mainly on the original Crowley book. So it doesn't really do all that much for me. And these are my opinions on these books. Now, to talk about what is in this book, Tarot Mysticism, and the subtitle is The Psycho-Spiritual Technology of the Thoth Tarot. So I'm just going to talk about what's in the book. There are black and white illustrations in the book. It's divided into 4 main chapters, and chapter 1, the Esoteric Tarot. Now, the Thoth Tarot is, the quintessential esoteric tarot, based on the Golden Dawn, totally based on the Golden Dawn, but it has Crowley's own Thelemic elements of his own order superimposed on there as well. So chapter 1, the Esoteric Tarot. That's a really important chapter to read. I know a lot of people tend to sometimes skip those early chapters, but it's essential for this book to understand the approach that Joe Monteleone has taken to capture the essence, the total essence of the Thoth Tarot and Hermetic Qabalah. So the Esoteric Tarot is Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is the Major Arcana cards. Chapter 3 is the Court cards. Chapter 4 is the Minor Arcana, and he's calling those cards the small cards because that is what Crowley did in his book. And then Chapter 5 is Practical Application. And Chapter 6 is like a conclusion. He's calling that What's the Point? And I suppose some people may want to just look at that little brief kind of conclusion. There's recommended resources, bibliography, and an index. So I'm just going to turn to some of the pages in the book to show you. In Chapter 1 in the Esoteric Tarot, it's really important. I'm really, really glad that Joe Monteleone has, first of all, defined mysticism in regard to the Thoth Tarot and Hermetic Qabalah, because it is Hermetic Qabalah, or all Qabalah is mysticism, is a system of mysticism. And I also really love this. He then talks about and defines consciousness in relation to Hermetic Qabalah and the Thoth Tarot. Consciousness is something that is overlooked a little bit in regard to Hermetic Qabalah, but it's essentially, it's the essence of it. It is actually it's a system of consciousness in the way that accessing different levels of consciousness, using the system for contemplation. Now, I was just so pleased to see this finally laid out in a book once and for all, because I've been talking about this for the last 8 years on YouTube. Whenever I talk about Hermetic Qabalah and the Thoth Tarot in particular, a lot of people regard tarot completely in regard to divination. That's a different thing. That is different. For me personally, I have not used divination in regard to tarot for about 10 years. That might shock people a little bit. I am a tarot collector, and I am interested in books about tarot. But as far as divination is concerned, I have not needed to have anything to do personally with divination for the last 10 years. That is because once I discovered Hermetic Qabalah, I had no need for divination. There was just so much for me to access within the system of Hermetic Qabalah. I did not need to do that. So, and this is why I'm really, really glad that it has been introduced to the tarot reading public who are curious about the Thoth Tarot and Hermetic Qabalah, and they're interested in contemplation and mysticism, how to use the Thoth Tarot in that way. So I'm just so glad someone's finally stated those things. Now, in the Esoteric Tarot chapter, you have got the Qabalah diagrams, just like the glyph diagram behind me. And you've got the different paths, the pathways here between the spheres for the different major arcana cards. And even just looking at the diagram of the glyph, of the Qabalah glyph, That in itself is actually, this is actually Hermetic Qabalah. When you do not have the tarot pathways and the cards, when you just have the Kabbalah glyph like that, people confuse that with Jewish Kabbalah. That is not Jewish Kabbalah. A lot of people aren't aware that this Kabbalah glyph is actually different to the one that is used in Jewish Kabbalah. It's not quite the same. This particular glyph that is used in Hermetic Kabbalah is based on, this comes from Christian Kabbalah. So the timeline, the historical timeline goes Jewish Kabbalah, which is the original, then Christian Kabbalah, and Hermetic Kabbalah was derived from Christian Kabbalah. So I just wanted to point that out, because a lot of the time when Kabbalah is mentioned, there's a lot of people who say, oh, that's cultural appropriation. Well, actually, it's not totally that. It's a kind of syncretism, a spiritual syncretism that has been adopted and developed over hundreds of years. So I just thought I'd mention that. Now, when you get into the court cards, I'm going to show you an incredible diagram that's in the book in a moment. So, for example, with all of the major arcana cards, there's the black and white picture for each. That's a star card. It's a black and white picture for each. Black and white illustration of each of the cards. And the description of these cards, it's just so informative and enjoyable to read. It's just beautifully written, and it just mentions all of the things that Crowley intended, all part of all of the different concepts, and these are, as I was saying, these are like a combination of mainly Golden Dawn concepts, but with some of the Crowley concepts entwined for each of the cards. So you've got all of that. Now these are descriptions for all of the major arcana cards, and you'll have descriptions for the court cards in that chapter, and you'll have the descriptions. I'm calling these descriptions. It's not written in a way, it's written in a symbolic, all of the symbolism, all of the mythology. It's not written, if you're looking for divination meanings, that's not really what this book is about. It's really describing all of the concepts and ideas for each of the cards. Here's another great diagram in here showing the 4 worlds of Kabbalah, the 4 different planes meaning are in here. I love the way the diagrams have been done. Now, when you get to the court card chapter, there is this amazing, this is the best layout of a diagram I've ever seen. It's about 6 pages. This is to do with, this is called the astrology graph for the court cards. Goes on for several pages, and the headings of here, it's got the general meaning, general concept for the cards. But what I love is the way it has also, for each of the court cards, he has made an alignment, a correspondence with the major arcanas, with the major arcana cards. I haven't seen that very often. And also with the minor arcana. They're all in this one diagram. It's very well done. You know, I just think that's great. That's one of the best things I've seen. One of the best things I've read. This is another reason why I'm really quite impressed with this book. I didn't expect to be quite so impressed because I just thought, oh, this is going to be yet another rehash of the Thoth Tarot in a simplified sort of way. This is accessible. It's good even for intermediate readers. For me, it's like a refresher course. But this book is refreshing. It's really well written. It's really well done. It's well organised. It's well put together. It's a great book. And then when we get to the small cards, the minor arcana, there's another chart in here where it talks about it's the minor arcana cards in relation to the 4 worlds of Qabalah and includes the parts of the soul which are also the concept to do with Hermetic Qabalah as well. Usually, you know, you can quite often see a chart of the minor arcana cards with the 4 worlds, but to include the parts of the soul as well in Hermetic Qabalah, you know, it's just a great idea. And you've also got that alongside the court cards as well. So that's a great chart. I'm just going to see whether there's anything else that I want to mention. Pretty sure I've covered the things I mainly want to say. And then at the last chapter where you get to practical application, he does mention divination. Divination is mentioned, but I love the description in here because what he actually says in here, a very, very true thing, that he really talks about why divination is different to Qabalah practice. And he actually states the fact that when you are doing a tarot reading, you're actually using a different part of your mental awareness. It's a different part of, you're accessing a different part of consciousness. So, for example, with the tarot reading, you're using your local awareness, but when you are contemplating and using the Hermetic Qabalah system, you are accessing non-local awareness. And he explains that and talks about that in this practical application chapter at the end of the book, towards the end. And the only type of layout or spread that that Joe Monteleone mentions is the tetragrammatic spread, which is like this, where you use a spread for each of the 4 worlds. So you have a pile of cards for each of the 4 worlds. So it's really a tetragram spread. And he talks about the concepts, you know, the separate concepts for each point of the spread, the 4 points of the spread, or the 4 piles of the cards. I think that's great too. And then you get to the end of the book with the conclusion and the resources, bibliography, and the index. So as you can probably tell, I'm really quite taken with this book. I didn't expect to be impressed with this book. I really do think it's right up there with the top 3 in regard to the Thoth Tarot and Hermetic Qabalah. It captures the essence of the Thoth Tarot rather than talking about the general ideas or just a general approach. This book actually captures the essence of the Thoth Tarot, why the deck was created, what the concepts and ideas are, the structure of the deck, all in relation to the Hermetic Qabalah of the Golden Dawn, with some of the ideas and concepts of Thelema entwined with the system. So I think it's really worthwhile for people who want that, who want to know what the Thoth Tarot is about in relation to Hermetic Qabalah, and why it was actually created in the first place. What is it about? Why is it different? And it's so different because it was created specifically for Hermetic Qabalah practice, and to access mysticism in regard to the tarot, and to use the Thoth Tarot in regard to contemplation, which is what I've been doing for about 15 or 20 years now. And I couldn't tell you that the number of insights and new meanings that I have discovered using the Hermetic Qabalah system. So I think that's all I've got to say for now, but I'm really glad this book has been written. It was very much needed. And for people who are interested, I'll put some details below the video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.